Hello, my fellow modeling and tabletop gaming enthusiasts, and welcome to the Mediocre Modeler Show. Well, here we are. It's the conclusion, part 4 of the Marine M4 Sherman Pacific build, painting, converting, blog, vlog, whatever you want to call it. So this is the final part. So we're going to go ahead and get everything finished up for this bad boy and get everything ready. Just get it done. It's been obviously quite a while, but yeah, it's finally done. So why don't we go ahead, head on down to the bench and see how things finish up.
It's time to get dirty. All right, so we're going to start the weathering on our Pacific Sherman here. And the very first thing we're going to do is a little bit of sponge chipping. And to do that, we're going to use some Vallejo Monocolor German Camo Black Brown. That is 70.822. And obviously we're going to need a sponge to do it. And to hold the sponge, I've got this handy dandy little grabber tool from the model railroading section of my local hobby store before it went completely to garbage under new ownership. But enough on that. So we'll go ahead and get started. It's a pretty simple process. You can use it for a lot of things. I found it works really well for doing metallic chipping, doing paint chipping on lots of stuff. So what we're going to do is just tore off a little piece of foam, and I'm going to put it in my little grabber here. You can, of course, hold it between your fingers, but that gets tiring for my fingers. And I got a piece of paper towel here, kitchen roll towel if you prefer. So we're just going to get a little bit on our sponge and kind of dab off the excess. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be kind of focusing on some of the more worn areas, mainly just kind of the sharper edges. So might as well just start here at the rear of the tank. I posted a few pictures of this in progress on a couple of places, and some of the comments that I've gotten are how it's still far too clean for a Marine Sherman. It's like, well, I haven't done the weathering yet, so it probably will be for a little bit. But this will, of course, be a multi-step process, so we'll work through all that throughout the course of this video. So, again, mostly just looking at the edges where the paint would be chipped most easily, and then we'll, of course, add to that with a number of other methods as we progress. So just kind of getting those edges there. And you've probably seen me do this before. I believe I went through this process with the what was it, the jackal that we did sometime last year. Try and avoid my stowage there as best I can, and try and avoid the wooden armor with this color as well. I find this German Camo Black Brown works pretty well for green vehicles. Unfortunately, some of these edges are going to be a little bit tougher to get to, or do, period. So we'll just get as close as we can. If we get a little spillover, that's okay too. Not the end of the world. So, but yeah, it's as simple as that. Just kind of focus on those sharp edges. Raise spots where you think you would have gotten more wear. Maybe the fuel filler caps probably got used a bit more, maybe got a little bit more wear and tear than some other stuff. Pioneering tool locks and stuff there. Yeah, and I mean, it's as simple as this, and you could, definitely call it good at that point, after you've gone through and done this around our bow gunner's hatch there. And then around our driver's hatch. Got that little turret ring, the travel lock. And that's a little bit bigger than I would prefer right there. Excuse me. But, well, that's okay, Maybe some of these spots got a little bit more worn. Maybe took a little bit more shell impacts or something. Definitely want to get these, sharp angled areas like that. Maybe around the headlights and everything there. Again, it's a pretty simple process, and it definitely does a lot to enhance the look of a model. And then one of the nice things about doing the decals before this is you can kind of get just a little bit of, you know, wear and tear on those decals, transfers, whatever you prefer to call them. And this, of course, has gotten a coat of matte varnish after the decals were applied, so. But we'll have to gloss it up again before we're done. And I like to make sure we get a good little bit here towards the bottom side, because it definitely be picking up some paint scratches and chipping from driving over who knows what out there in the South Pacific. And then the sides, of course, the running gear. We might do that a little bit more heavily, just because I don't really want to put a bunch of mud texture all over the bottom of the model, but you know, that's all right. You can do yours however you like. This is how I'm gonna do mine. I'm not too worried about the gray areas, because obviously everything is nicely painted at this point. And again, we'll be weathering that up a bit more too as we go along, so that's not as much of an issue. If the rubber on the wheels is not quite perfect, and we'll definitely get a little bit there on those drive sprockets. I'm not going to worry about the inside of that, or the underside. Shouldn't generally see that a whole lot, so just kind of do the same thing here. And I think that is kind of one important thing to note with the Shermans. As you can see here, you know, I've just done the tracks black with actually technically I think it's German gray, not quite perfectly glued, but you know, good enough. The Sherman tracks were actually rubber, but I think they had some metal links on the outsides, so unlike German tanks, which had metal tracks, you know, you don't need to really do any metal dry brushing or anything. Granted, I've done that in the past, but I opted not to for this one. The track pads, I should say. I mean, I think even the current M1 Abrams is fairly similar. It doesn't have like fully metal tracks. There's a rubber track pad on them. So I don't, you know, there's probably more I could do actually on here. I'm also starting to run out of paint, and I still need to do the turret. This is kind of one of those spots, if you know, one of those times where if you made a mistake somewhere along the line painting, that you can go in and use weathering to sort of cover it up, hide the crimes, as it were. And even just, you know, little dabs here and there kind of help just give it a little bit more character, make the paint finish just a little bit less uniform. Definitely adds a bit more visual interest to it. All right, so there is our hull. And again, I'll do something with these to make them a little bit more. Actually, that one side isn't nearly as, we need to kind of get that more in line with the other side, I think. A little bit more wear and tear on it. But again, we'll be covering this with a number of other weathering techniques. So yeah, so there's our hull with our first weathering application, just some light sponge chipping. And again, my decals are not perfectly accurate. I mean, a lot of times Marines didn't actually have the star on their vehicles, but I bought a Rubicon sheet just for these USMC decals, so I figured I should put one on there. Wanted to give it a name, so we called it Porky. So we're gonna need a little bit more paint here just to do the turret, if you'll excuse me for just a second here. And again, there is a point where you can go too far. So, I mean, with a lot of weathering, you know, less is more. So, you know, you want to do it somewhat sparingly. You can always add more. It's, you know, obviously very difficult to take away your weathering. So, lucky number 13 here. Got some blood spatter on it from when I was working on a commission project. That's okay. We can just hide that little crime right there. Or maybe it was a war crime. You probably can't tell very well, but there is actually a little bit of a mar in the finish, like right here, from when I was applying the matte varnish, so we're going to use weathering to kind of fix that, kind of hide it a little bit. But yeah, mainly focus on those sharper edges, places where, you know, they'd be more likely to be climbing on the tank. Try and get some of those spots there. I'm probably going to not do a whole lot with the main gun, but be sure to get those areas around it and kind of spots underneath it, get along the base of the turret there. You know, when you kind of start getting just a little bit of paint left, that's a good time to just kind of go around and do those random little miscellaneous spots. Just kind of like that. Get up around the cupola or cupola. I say cupola, but I know some places they refer to it as a cupola. It's weird when I'm used to pronouncing it one way, and then you hear others do it another way, and then trying to replicate the way that they say it when it's not what I'm accustomed to saying. Try not to get any on the stowage. See, that spot's maybe even a little bit more than I would really like, but, you know, it's okay. It's all right. Nothing to be upset about. Maybe it's a little bit dirtier here on the back of the turret. Yeah, that's a little more than we really want, but again, it's okay. It's not a problem. We'll live with it. We'll work with it. Just make sure we don't have any just completely blank areas. Makes you almost kind of question, you know, what went on. Just do a little bit on the gun barrel. You know, and from there, it's actually not looking too bad. I think we're probably in pretty good shape there. So there is the first step of our weathering. Okay, now for our second step, we're going to do a little bit of weathering to our wooden armor. And we're going to use our base coat for the camo for that. So MiG 138 ammo by MiG, Desert Yellow. And again, it's going to be the exact same process that we used for the brown all over the green armor. So again, we'll get a little bit on our sponge, dab off as much of the excess as we can. We want this to be pretty light. And we're gonna just mainly just focus on the kind of the red and green areas. Kind of work more around like the edges and the seams just a little bit, almost as if kind of the paint's flaking off a little bit in those spots. Kind of work that transition in there. I'm not 100% convinced that that's actually really working for me, but that's okay. You know, we've got a lot of room to go still. Yeah, I mean, that's looking pretty good. Just tiny little bits. Nothing too crazy. We might even get just a little bit more on the areas that we airbrushed to this color too. That's starting to actually look not too bad. Because of course it's going to be just a little bit brighter. I want to get a little less paint on there as we go along. And a good thing to do is just kind of rotate the piece of foam as you're doing it so it doesn't kind of develop a pattern and end up looking the same kind of all over. So that's not looking too bad, giving us a nice little chipping effect. And then of course we'll flip her on around and do the other side. See there, you kind of see I'm not really liking that pattern a whole lot that it's getting. makes it look a little bit too uniform. It's not as random. So I'm going to kind of go in a few of these spots and try and work around them just to break it up a little bit more. I'm just using real light pressure, just kind of in and out with the sponge. I might go back to the other side, kind of touch up some of those spots, because this side's definitely looking a little bit more worn than the other, which is fine, totally possible, totally reasonable. I just want to make sure that we're getting stuff a little bit more kind of random. You know, we try to do stuff, randomize it, but it just doesn't quite ever work that way. You can see, yeah, there's definitely a few spots on here that need kind of be touched up because we got a little bit too much in those areas. It's just off by itself. Okay, I'm feeling a little bit better about that now. And again, once we get some additional weathering on there, that should look pretty well. So, all right, so the next step, we're gonna give this a gloss coat, and then we will get on to an oil wash. Now it is time to start our next phase of the weathering process, and that of course is our oil wash. So I've already got that mixed up in here with some raw umber Winsor & Newton Artist Oil, thinned out a bit with some mineral spirits. So we'll go ahead and get to applying this. Now we already got the gloss coat on, and that's nice and cured, so we can just go ahead and get going. So I'm just going to start here on the sides, and I'm just going to pretty much put it everywhere. What I would always do, but with all that wood grain texture, I really want that to get in there because I think that's going to make it look really, really good. Try and keep this in frame and in focus as best I can. And of course, with that gloss coat on there, it makes it easier just to wipe off all of the excess. Make sure we get our edges here. And then we're just going to go ahead and just get all over on the drive. Tracks, the drive wheels, sprocket, return rollers, idlers, bogies, everything is just going to get the treatment down here. So this part we're intending to be pretty grimy, dirty, muddy without actually putting any real mud on there. I don't quite want to go that far, but that's just me. That's just me and just what I want to do with this one. So we're just going to go ahead and get everything all nice and oily here. There's lots of pre-mixed oil washes out there from MIG, AK, whoever you want to buy from. And they work pretty well, or enamel washes. They're not really oil washes, I guess. But I guess I've just had this tube. I've had multiple tubes of Artist Oils for 15 years probably at this point. So it's just, yeah, might as well just mix up my own. You know, and I can control the formula a little bit, you know. Make sure they're how I want them to be. It might seem kind of daunting. I mean, the whole weathering process can feel a little bit daunting if you're not used to doing it, just because you're taking a nicely painted model and then just undoing all of your hard work by getting it so dirty. Of course, we want to get lots up under here, like so. And we'll go ahead and make sure we get our tracks too. So the underside of this, yeah, we want to get quite a fair bit on there. I mean, we're going to wipe most of it off with a makeup sponge, but still. We don't need to be worried so much about tide marks and stuff with an oil wash like we would with say an acrylic wash, because we can just wipe all of that off. Go ahead and get the front of the treads too. All right, so that's about one side of the tank done. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest done, get the turret taken care of, and then we'll be back once this is all dried and cleaned up. So as you can see, quite a bit has actually changed since the last portion of the video. So things kind of happened a little quick. One thing just kind of led to another, and everything just got finished before I could really record everything. So I'll try to walk through everything that happened here. It's been about 2 weeks, not quite, since this has actually been finished. So where we left off, I did the oil wash on everything. Take the turret off just for ease of movement. So we went ahead, did the oil wash, got that all cleaned up, and then the next step was doing the weathering and stuff down here on the tracks and everything. And I did this in a couple of steps. So I used some Iraqi sand from Vallejo to just kind of airbrush on some, kind of go for a dried mud effect, and then we've got more of a wet mud effect using a couple of different brown acrylic paints. The tracks and running gear all got a pigment wash, which is where you take like some dry pigments, in this case some Vallejo burnt umber mixed with some airbrush thinner, turns it into more of a wash, and it gets everywhere. The problem is it tends to set it as well, so it ended up being a lot more than I'd originally intended. And of course we got it all over, but you know, it works out well enough considering going through the marshy, dirty areas of the South Pacific. So I tried to clean it up as best I could, again just using some acrylic paints through the airbrush. You know, it looks all right. You know, I'm not, if I could do it over again I would, but I can't because it's all pretty well fixed in place. So yeah, once I did that, then I gave everything kind of an overall just like dusting again with Iraqi sand, just to kind of dull it down and kind of tie it all in. So gave the turret a dusting as well, and you can definitely, I mean, that shows through pretty well. There are a few spots where you can see where bigger drops of paint fell, and that's fine, not a big deal. So the tank commander is glued in place now. Yeah, and it looks like actually this side, you can see a bit more of the green through, so this didn't get quite as much. Got a little duty on there. But yeah, so it's done. Gave it the final coat of matte varnish. Yeah, and everything on our Marine Pacific Sherman is done. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I've been working on a couple of other techniques that had I worked on ahead of time, I would have used on this, but I hadn't, so but that's fine. You know, no big deal. But yeah, overall, pretty darn happy with how this turned out. So yeah, so a nice, I mean, this was a fun project to give it some individuality and just like a little bit of personality, you know, with just the ad hoc scratch built armor was pretty easy to do. You know, the stowage and everything, and the tank commander. I've already been called out once for the conversion of putting the machine gun over here instead of here where it was supposed to be, but if I put it here, I couldn't have the tank commander in, so I figured, you know, field modification. You know, a lot of later Sherman turrets had the 50 in a different spot, so I wanted to be standing on the engine deck, manning the 50, you know, and this obviously is one of the early ones that only has the single turret commander hatch. And of course the small hatches as well, M4A2 style. So it could be an M4A2, M4A3, whichever. You know, some people want to get very particular about it. That's cool. You know, I'm at a point where complete historical accuracy, yeah, I'm fine not being perfectly accurate. So there you go. But yeah, so here we are. Yeah, fun project. I'd highly recommend giving something like this a try yourself. You know, just have fun doing some scratch building, little converting, and kind of pushing the envelope a little bit with the modeling skills.
there we go. She's all done. Finished pretty well. That was a really fun project. It gave me an opportunity right from the get-go to do a little bit of converting, a little bit of scratch building. I say converting, just adding extra parts. I mean, there are 1 or 2 parts swapped around from where they would normally be. Definitely a chance to really kind of practice the painting skills, and definitely with the weathering, did a couple of new things that I'd never tried before that turned out really well. So this build kind of got put into a weird place because going back about a month, it's been things in the real world have been really kind of bizarre. I don't necessarily want to bore you with all the details, but at the same time, I kind of want to talk about it just for catharsis, because it got to a point where it was the levels of stress from some of the stuff I was experiencing were starting to affect me physically. But it all kind of started towards about the beginning of June, so a month and a half, almost 2 months ago. I needed to have some stuff worked on my car. Eventually it got done. It took a weekend. It should have only taken a day. Shop kept getting bad parts, eventually installed bad parts, which made the process last even longer. But essentially they gave my car back to me with more issues than when I brought it in. Without going into all of the detail, I was told they couldn't get a replacement part that they needed until the next day, but I was good to drive until then. I took them at their word. About 15 minutes later, I was stranded with a dead vehicle on the side of the highway. What had happened is the power steering pump had failed, took out the serpentine belt, which took out the alternator, which then took out the battery. So my car was completely dead. Had to have it towed, which the shop agreed to pay for. Due credit to the shop, they did cover all of the repairs that were necessitated by them not informing me when I got my car, hey, there is this other issue. Needless to say, I will not be taking my vehicle back to that shop or that particular national chain ever again. So got through that whole situation, and then I was also scheduled to have some dental crowns done, but my dental insurance just kept jerking things around, so I rescheduled my appointment to 3 weeks later than I originally had, which was just, adding stress. It's, if you've ever had dental work done, it's not the most fun thing to have done. It's also costly, which I had sorted all that out ahead of time, so that wasn't a problem, but just delaying it added to the stress. Some work engagements added a lot of stress that by this point, middle of June, is when I was starting to notice physical effects of just the levels of stress that I was under. And I was also starting to realize I need to learn better stress management techniques, because my normal method of internalizing it all it might work for small things, but you start adding up enough stuff over a short enough period of time, and you start to get, you feel those physical effects, which, I wasn't like having a heart attack or anything. I have high blood pressure, but I control it with medication and diet and exercise, which diet and exercise I could be doing more of. But just a general feeling of malaise and unwellness, and, nothing where I didn't have to go to my doctor, because I started to feel better after some of this stuff had passed. When I even got an eye exam and everything like that. Then finally time comes, get my crowns, or I get the permanent crowns, and then was scheduled 2 weeks later to come in and get the permanent ones. So I got the temporary crowns, get the 2 permanent ones 2 weeks later. But I noticed after having the build up for the crowns, I had some soreness that I wasn't entirely expecting. It was pretty persistent. It wasn't excruciating. I've had bad dental pain before. I've had an abscessed tooth in the past. If you've ever had one of those, it is awful. But this was controllable with Tylenol and ibuprofen. Well, the day after the 4th of July, I had a family member pass away. And so there was that to deal with. We had family in town, with services scheduled for the middle of the following week, which then the week after that, I was supposed to go on a two or 3 day trip out of state for work. Well, the Monday of that week that we had the visitation, the burial, and the funeral scheduled, I called my dentist's office and asked, hey, I kind of had this going on for about 2.5 weeks or a week and a half now. Is that normal? It's like, well, yeah, kind of. It's like, well, I'll talk to the doctor, and then I got a call back later, and they said, the doctor wants you to go see, the endodontist for a consult to see if you need a root canal. I'm like, okay, great. Call them, get that scheduled, find out, I'm exhausting my dental benefit for the year, so I'm going to have a substantial out-of-pocket cost, whatever. It's like, I'll find a way, because, if you're in a situation where you need a root canal, you need to get it done, because it's awful. So, the morning of the burial and the funeral, which they did it in reverse order, had the burial at the cemetery first for family, and then the funeral service at their church. 6:45 that morning, I'm at the endodontist getting a consult for a root canal, and then getting a root canal, which I've had to have root canals before. I've never had an issue with root canals. A lot of people say they're just terrible. They're uncomfortable, but I've never had a reaction, and it completely cured the issue. So that was fantastic. And then the next day is when I actually got my permanent crowns. And that was kind of the last thing in this string of events over the period of a month that were just, adding so much to my stress level. And then, that was about 2 weeks ago. Maybe about 3 weeks ago at this point. And, I'm feeling much, much, much better. Still kind of on edge, a little anxious, just because it's, so many weird things happening in the span of a month or so, a month and a half. It's just, you're almost just waiting for the other foot, the other shoe to drop. So that, part of that stress management thing, got to just, take a more positive outlook on things. But yeah, so I ended up not going on this work trip. I went to my boss and said, I got to do what's best for me. And in the event that something does go wrong, I don't want to be 8.5 hours from home and trying to find someplace where I can get dental care. It's like, I want to be where I need to be. So, and I feel that I made the right decision for myself, because anything less, emotional, mental, and physical health, I think, are things that we as a society neglect, especially mental and emotional health, I know, in this day and age. And if it comes to a point where you need to tell someone no for your own well-being, you have to know that it's okay to do that. And that's a situation that I felt I was in. And my boss was completely understanding. I think there were a lot of people who were disappointed I couldn't make that trip. I was disappointed, but at the same time, I had to put my well-being first. There are other people that could, do what I was going to be doing. There was, in fact, someone already scheduled to go to do what I was going to do that could do it. So I wasn't leaving anyone in a lurch where they wouldn't be able to, accomplish what they set out to do. But when you're going through stuff like that, a mental crisis, an emotional crisis, a physical crisis like that, you need to understand that it is important to accept that you can put yourself first. You can put yourself ahead of your job, ahead of social obligations. I mean, obviously, those of us with children, we still have to maintain that balance. And I mean, that's just our responsibility as a parent. But there are times where we do need to recognize that we need to address these issues. If we're not feeling well, we need to go see a doctor. If we're feeling emotionally unwell or mentally unwell, we need to go see, again, I call them a GP, like, general practitioner, general physician, like I think they do more in the UK, but my primary care provider, and seek referral for mental or emotional assistance, And I'm at a point, I guess I'm not really sure where I'm going with this story. I kind of wanted to vent and just express it and get it out there. I've talked to friends and stuff and things like that. But just the importance of taking care of our mental and emotional health, especially on top of our physical health. And for me, modeling, is very much an escape. It's not just a hobby. Sometimes it's an obsession, but it's also something that I like to do to kind of help relax. I do probably more of it than I should. I mean, yesterday I sat down for, I don't know, this is the first time I've done this in a very long time, 2 hours straight. My elbow was sore the rest of the day from being, hunched up like this, doing edge highlights on a Space Marine tank. It was totally worth it because it turned out great, but man, my elbow was sore. I can only do about an hour at a time before I need to go do something else. But I wanted to push myself to do this because my wife and kids were out of the house, so I wanted to do this just straight through. But again, neglecting the physical health by, a sore elbow. But the most important thing, I kind of just, again, it's catharsis for myself just to get it out there and to kind of talk about it and vent a little bit, but also just as a reminder to everyone out there, to my fellow modelers, my tabletop gaming enthusiasts, my viewers, my valued viewers, just how important it is to make sure that we're not neglecting our health, all forms of our health. If you ever met me in person, I don't eat the best, I don't exercise all that much, but I do try to at least do something for my mental and emotional well-being. But if you need to take a step away from a hobby, or take a day off work, which again, something I'm not great at doing, we have to remember that we have to be okay doing that. And again, we as a society, I don't think we value that as much as we should. And the kind of thing that I always think is, I agree, the job that I have, my day job, which is what provides for me and my family, I agree to do that job in exchange for compensation and benefits. So I have my salary, I have my health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, retirement funding, my 401k match, and then I have my vacation time, my paid time off, and I have all of those things in very good quantities. I have a good salary. I'm pretty happy with my salary. I wish I had moved into this position much earlier than I did, but I'm in a good position with my salary, and there's a lot of room for me to grow in that. I have very, very good medical benefits, and I pay a premium for. When I say I pay a premium, like an insurance premium, but I don't pay a premium for them. I have an excellent retirement match from my employer, and I have an absolutely insane amount of vacation time and sick time. We have PTO because our vacation time and sick time is all rolled into one. And they're usually, my supervisor I don't think I've ever been told no when it came to taking time off, but it's one of those things as a courtesy. I try to make sure that there aren't too many other people gone. And if I'm going to be out for an extended period, a couple of days a week, always clear that with my supervisor ahead of time. Just like, hey, I want to take this time for vacation. Okay, cool, whatever. But we just have to. We have it for a reason. It's to use it. So we as the workforce, I say, we need to not be afraid to use that and to take advantage of our benefits. So anyway, JP would be proud of me for saying we as the workforce, we as the bourgeoisie. I guess two real quick shout outs to my buddies Sean and JP, who in the last month and a half both were awarded their PhDs. So to both of those gentlemen, JP, I know you'll be watching. Sean, if you do happen to hear this, guys, again, congratulations. That is absolutely momentous. I'm so proud of both of you for sticking with it and reaching that level. So congratulations to both of you, doctor and doctor. So congratulations, guys. So yeah, I get off my soapbox now, back to modeling. But yeah, so the Sherman is done. I really hope you guys all enjoyed that. I think I gotta come up with some more ideas for projects. I'm waiting on some stuff for something else I want to do. I'm waiting for a rule book for a game that I want to record playthrough. Hopefully that'll be coming here in the next couple of weeks. We'll have to see. But I think the next thing, we're not going to be doing a build log on it, but I will give you a quick touch. I did an inbox review, but I've actually started building and painting it, is the Rubicon LVT. And I'm doing the LVT A2, so I'm doing the armored version. So when that's done, we'll probably do a video on that. But yeah, we'll figure something out here for the coming weeks. So as always, folks, thank you so much for watching. I sure hope you enjoyed the video. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, just drop them down below, or feel free to find me on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Mediocre Modeling Studios. As always, one of the best ways you can help support the channel, like, comment, subscribe. You can also visit the links to my social media as well as my Warlord Games affiliate link. Check that out. I know with Bolt Action version 3 coming out in just a couple of months, the rule books are already on pre-order. I think they've got new models coming out. And there's some awesome previews going up on the Warlord community site if you haven't seen those. I know it's going to kind of throw things in a little bit different direction than what I was originally thinking. just due to the army composition, which I think is actually what they did I think is really cool. I'm actually really excited for it. It's just, it means I'm going to need more models. So we'll have to figure something out there. But yeah, so yeah, hit that link down below to go to Warlord Games. Use that affiliate link and go check it out. Even just clicking the link and visiting the site is helpful. But if you do want to buy some stuff, you can buy it direct from Warlord. And if you remember the last couple of videos I talked about, the shipping experience is pretty seamless and pretty cool. So yeah. So until next time, folks, as always, thank you very much for watching. And may your paints be thin, your brushes be pointy, and your dice be hot.